Constantly shifting through the time-space continuum, Metron's three disciples observe the universe from the Mobius Couch.
I was swimming in the Caribbean. Animals were hiding behind a rock, except a little fish bumped into me, swore he's trying to talk to me. Say, what? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Probably on the Mobius Couch, a time-space interdimensional vehicle from which your three hosts survey the world of comic books, comic book movies, and all things. I shouldn't say all things comics because we really only do comic books. And one time we did a movie.
Well, one time we did a TV
We've
show.
done some Marvel Plus or
oh
Disney
wow,
Plus shows.
We did do a couple shows. Okay,
yeah.
Anyway, we talk about comic books. So, people of the world, welcome to the Mobius Couch. Your three hosts are made up of, first of all, me, Alessandro. Hello, and I'm joined on the couch by Joe.
Hello, Al.
And Patrick.
How are you?
Hello, Al. Joe, how are you doing?
Hey, Patty.
I know I begin with this every time, but we have known each other decades.
I feel like my intros have gotten really good. So
yeah, did you see how that flowed?
I think our small talk is just as forced and unnatural as it's always been. Even though, again, multiple tens of years have passed that we've known each other.
We need multiple tens.
I mean, decades.
Yeah, so let's go right to what we're going to talk about today is a 12-issue comic about John's The Martian Manhunter, written by Steve Orlando and drawn by Riley Rossmo. This came out in 2018, and the series, I can't quite understand if it was just called Martian Manhunter or if it was called Martian Manhunter Identity.
I think it's called Identity. I mean, it
is called Identity. All right. That's the arc we're talking about. Yeah. But we're talking about that arc. Martian Manhunter, of course, famously a member of the Justice League, a big-time DC hero. And this is kind of a comic run just based on him, not part of the super team. It's kind of like
an expanded origin story. Also Black Label, so they kind of have like free reign to do a little darker shit and do it a little more interesting, I guess,
Yeah, this is definitely sort of an R-rated.
Yeah, not by much, though.
It's pretty R.
It's pretty terrifying a little bit.
Pretty R.
The art is... the art can make some pretty terrifying scenes.
That's true, yeah. Patty, what was your overall take on this 12-issue run on Martian Manhunter?
Yeah, what did you think about it, Spaceman?
Okay. So, it's an interesting concept because I think John Jones is... we know him from the Justice League cartoon and the Justice League comics. He's very robotic, keeps his cards close to the vest, almost just, his personality is very just flatline, monotone. I'm more of a Miss Martian girl than a Martian Manhunter guy. But I was excited to read,
from Young Justice, right?
Miss Martian?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was in Teen Titans, and then
That's true.
Justice, But no, I thought it was a great idea, similar to Mr. Miracle, Black Label's treatment on that, taking this character that, doesn't have too many big fans that I know of, and I don't really know much about his history and retelling his origin story. I was excited to read that. However, it's a 12-issue maxi series, and I felt like this could have been condensed down to like a 6-issue series maybe, because it just really dragged. A lot of the issues seemed repetitive. I did appreciate Orlando's world building with the Martian Society. I liked the idea of the fact they have social shapes, like they have a shape that they go out in when they're among society. That's how everyone knows them, is in that form, even though they can change into any form. I thought that was fun. And how when you're a young kid, you are just like a glob. Like the way they drew his daughter she is adorable. His daughter
she's the baby Yoda of the comic.
Yeah, she is. Like every other time I've seen his daughter drawn, she's like a creepy Martian alien. And this one, she's just like a glob of green goo with big, baby eyes.
Big cute eyes, yeah.
So I like the fact that they have this whole coming of age ceremony. I like the fact that Martians were obsessed with like Cro-Magnon humans, and that's why Martian Manhunter looks the way he does, because he was obsessed with humans, and he's got the really strong Neanderthal brow. I thought that was fun. The fact that a big punishment on Mars was to lock you into one form, so you couldn't shapeshift anymore. That was an interesting concept. I liked seeing a younger John that's flawed, because he seems very perfect in current continuity.
Yeah, he does.
You know? Like he
Yeah,
always
I
knows
agree.
what's going on. He always makes the right decision.
He's like the Rock of the Justice League, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
he always makes the logical choice. So it was fun to see him as a younger, and he's a police officer on Mars, a manhunter. But he was a corrupt cop. He was a corrupt manhunter. And I get that. I get that to make him a flawed character, but I felt like there wasn't enough of a good reason for him to be as corrupt as he was. Because it wasn't like his kid was dying from cancer, or it wasn't like they were like homeless. Like they had a like decent life, and he was doing terrible things to get the extra money, I guess, just to live in a really nice house. I mean, I think he turns over like all the undercover Martian Manhunters, like within the crime syndicate
At the very end,
yeah, to get
to save his
station
family,
over, but
you know.
yeah, at that point, it's like, okay, I get it.
At that point, I get it.
But everything before that, I'm like, why are you doing, like, why are you, like, it just made him seem kind of shitty, and it didn't. His character growth was just kind of strange. I had an issue with the jumping around the time periods, because I felt like they didn't do a good job of letting you know when you were in especially when it was the Earth timelines, when it was jumping back and forth. And I think they fucked up a few times, and they said it was in the past, but it was in current day. That was all confusing to me. That would take me out of it. I did like the villain. The villain was very good. I wish we got more of the villain earlier. I thought it was a great idea to focus on him being a detective on Earth. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It was a good concept, overall decent story. I just didn't love it, and I felt like it definitely could have been
drug on a little.
Yeah, it definitely could have been less than 12 issues.
Okay.
I did like the art. The art was amazing. The art was very well suited to this story, and I think that's what kind of kept me the most engaged was the art, except for the fact I didn't love the hair on his friend Mead. There was something about
his
that
partner.
hairstyle that made me.
It was a little out there.
Well, it just made me read all of her lines like as Reba McEntire in that horror movie Tremors with the giant arms, where she's just like always shouting in a Southern accent, like just always screaming. That's like how I read every single one of her lines, and I think it had to do with the hair.
I'm kind of there. I think I liked it probably more than you guys. But all right, let's start with the art. Riley, is it? It's Riley, right? Riley Rossmo.
Yeah, I think it's Riley Rossmo.
So his artwork lends itself to this book very, very nicely. Like obviously drawing all the shape shifting, and Martian Manhunter makes love with his wife. It's about them like blending their bodies together, and they just kind of swirl together in a giant mass, and they say we instead of I, and you know, kind of thing. And there's a lot of like really interesting panels where it shows him not in a solid shape. And the problem with this for me, I think, was art-wise, was that because I binge read this really, really quickly for the show. So like just so much nebulous shapes on every page after page after page, like started to kind of wear down on me. I'm like, I just need a little normal. Like I would like every panel where he was just like a normal dude, or actually a solid shape as Martian Manhunter or John Jones, was like a breath of fresh air, because it was like less insanity was going on. So like I found the Mars scenes, although interesting, kind of taxing, because it was like so much going on and so many swirls of shapes everywhere. And I was just like, this is exactly what it should be, but maybe I'm reading it too quickly, because I probably was. But like they just kind of had a negative impact on me overall. But like I completely understand why they chose him for this project. It fits perfectly. That being said, it got a little too much. Like sometimes I was just like, I need a little bit more normal to show how crazy and cool it can be. Like even when like the villain was like running around in a big red robe, but the sleeves would be like billowing up behind him a lot and like in weird shapes all the time, that I was like, is he shapeshift? Nobody's not, because he's frozen. Right, so it was very like odd. It was like a lot of movement in every panel, but it was almost like too much was going on.
I agree with you on that. That was
I liked his art in this book, but currently he draws Tim Drake's new book, for instance, and I don't think it works at all. You know, like he's just too animated and too all over the place for such a a grounded Batman story that I'm like, I want to love Tim's new book so much, and then like, but his art really distracts from me really enjoying that book. But for in this book, like, you know, it's exactly what it should be. He also drew like a Harley Quinn thing, I think around Fear State. Recently within DC, there was like a Harley Quinn book or Future State, sorry, not Fear State.
What is Fear State?
Well, Fear State was a Batman centric storyline, but it was after Future State. But Future State was like, they had a Harley Quinn book, and he drew that, and it, like, again, it kind of lends himself to Harley Quinn because he's kind of cartoony, and like it sort of made sense. But like, even then, I was just like, it's a little too much for me. But this book, first time ever that I've been reading his art, because I read those first, weirdly, and then I'm reading his art in this. I'm like, this works so well. It was just a little too much for me, but I don't think they could have picked a better artist to draw all those weird shapes and shape shifting and like all the interesting concepts that Steve Orlando came up with, and as Patty was just saying about like shape shifting and where they are in different stages of their life, and like what happens when they're interacting with each other and all that stuff, or like Martians, that is, like interacting with each other on Mars. Like, I can't even think of somebody that would probably have done a better job than he did, because like it's just all over the place and it's crazy. And if you have the time to read it slowly and take it all in, it's probably amazing. But like, I was just whipping through it so quickly that it got a little like disorienting, I guess. Story overall, though, I think I enjoy the take on his origin. I don't really know his origin super well, other than like what they've shown us in the Justice League cartoon and the brief stuff they kind of like talk about in the JLA comic, which is not a whole lot. Justice League New Frontier, for instance, really gave me a good reference for what it like, and that's not even like canon, I suppose, but like it was a really good representation of what Martian Manhunter comes to Earth and like what happened. That I was probably the first time I really read his origin story in a comic. But I don't know. So the story overall, I think I enjoyed it. I liked it a lot in certain aspects. There was, like Patty was saying, I think it was a little too long. Like a single issue would be focused on one little thing that they had to overcome, and I'm like, that didn't need a full issue for that, you know, kind of thing. It was just, and it's not like it's a huge problem that they took time to tell that beat, but they didn't need to, you know. So it's like this could have been truncated down. I don't know about 6, but maybe 8. You know, like something around that area would have been like probably a better book overall. I don't know. I think I enjoyed it overall. I don't know if I would recommend it, but we'll get to that at the end of the show, I suppose. Al, what do you think? What's your overall take?
Don't miss any of the apostrophes. I didn't like it. It's my overall take. No, all right. So, you know, all right. I hope you're thirsty because there's some
Don't just say you didn't like it. Say
right.
Why didn't you like it?
All right. There's some haterade coming. So all right. My overall take really isn't going to be that much different in terms of the quality of it. Like I think to what Patrick said, it was sort of okay. And that's pretty much how I felt about it. I basically disagree with everything else Patrick said. So I hate the Ren and Stimpy bullshit art we get for 12 issues. Like, no, thank you. I don't need any of that. Like Riley Rossmo, I'm sure you draw other things well. I Wikipedia'd. You're a professor in Calgary, Alberta, School of Design or something. I hope your students drop that class and learn from someone else. I just don't like
Christ.
I don't like any of this Ren and Stimpy shit. I just don't like it. It's not for me. It's not for me.
I mean, that's fair. Yeah. Okay.
That's all. That's all I'm saying. It didn't do it for me. That's all.
Totally allowed.
It is that is a good though, like kind of it is very reminiscent of Ren and Stimpy.
The gore aspects of it, or like the weird close-ups in Ren and Stimpy with all the hair and the weird teeth hanging, like that stuff.
Yeah, the one thing I'll kind of agree with Patrick on is I'll say that in the scenes that are on Mars and just completely steeped in that extraterrestrial world, it sort of works a little bit better that it's hyper Nickelodeon cartoony or whatever. But the Earth stuff, it just did not click with me at all. That's all I'm doing, And I understand this is completely subjective. I'm not saying Rossmo's a bad artist or anything. I mean, well, I guess I did just say his students shouldn't learn from him, so I apologize for that. But I mean, but it's like subjective. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad artist, but it didn't work for me, and I didn't like it at all. And to do 12 issues of it was just a lot.
It is. It's a little bit. I piggyback off you and Joe. It was a little bit sensory overload. Sometimes.
There's some brilliant panels. There's a lot of like really crazy movement going on in every panel, but like I think that's what the problem was. It was like so much motion and just them like standing still. Like, and I was just like, so it just got like a little too much. Like they're never just standing. They're always like moving in a weird like position. Like their feet are spread like they're running. There's a lot of that going on. And there's a little bit of, I don't know, their facial expressions didn't really match sometimes. Like there were times when like he would be talking to his partner and her face would be like, ah! And it'd be like all animated. And all she's saying is like, well, what about this? And you're like, what in the world? Like, why did he draw her face like that? It's just little things like that. So it just got to be a bit much for me over the course of 12 issues. But again, the shape changing and like the panel that's over here next to me, it's amazing. You know, like just like the blob of an arm, like the very Akira like arm smashing the guy into the ceiling. I was like, oh, that's awesome. You know, like, so there's things that I liked a lot. And there's other things that I'm like, too much, man. Dial it down, dial it back, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, the art generally didn't really do it for me. In terms of the writing, all right, so give me a minute to try to get this. I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to express this accurately. Okay.
Sure.
So to Patrick's point, like I agree, the Martian Society and all that stuff was super interesting. My complaint is I don't think they went far enough to really make it a substantial exploration. So I know it's a real common, you know, this isn't like a Steve Orlando specific problem with this comic. I mean, it's a very common sci-fi trope to show a society that is so different from ours, but yet so similar. We just did Far Sector pretty recently, which is a similar thing of like a space city of aliens, billions of light years away, but they have political issues just like Earth does. Like it's a standard sci-fi trope of like highlighting our current political problems through the lens of like, look at this far out crazy space society and see the parallels. Like I get that, but the whole crooked cop detective genre, I felt like really held back what might have been a more interesting sort of exploration of Martian society, especially the shape shifting. Why? I mean, like I felt like they stopped at 80%. Like they make the society where children decide their own shape at a certain age and all this interesting stuff. And yet what we're presented with is like binary male female adult forms that they all human, like anthropomorphic het binary forms that they kind of all
so I think part of that, like Patty was saying, is linking to their current fascination with like life on Earth that is currently growing.
But I'm not
and I think my point is like if you had gone back in time in Martian society, maybe the shapes would be more varied and different. But currently it's like the fad to be like, let's walk on two legs. Like they even say like, oh, it wasn't that long ago that we didn't all come out looking like this. It's just a very current thing that we all sort of look human.
But that's a detail. I think it would have been more interesting to go lean more into that aspect of it. And just
I agree.
Go way more into like a society that can change shape just at will. What would that look like? And I'm a little disappointed that what it looked like is, a Rock Hudson Hollywood man and his wife. And that's what we get. I would have liked a little bit more creativity in that sense. And that goes back, I guess I mentioned it as a writing thing, but it's more, I mean, both writing and art, frankly, I think could display that.
Could have been stronger
in a little more exciting way. So again, I don't know, just to bring this all back, I would have liked for Orlando to lean more into this society is completely different from us. Let's see what that would look like, and less into even though they're so different, this is just a crooked cop trying to save his family. Like we've seen this in every movie since the 70s.
Okay.
kind of trope. And I didn't like that. I felt like this was an opportunity to go a little bit beyond.
Yeah, the one thing that I felt like they did achieve was the interesting aspect of like, not only was John Jones, Martian Manhunter, pulled through space, but he was also pulled through time. Meaning, like, when his family died, it was Cro-Magnon Man, but when he showed up on Earth like seconds later, it was like Earth had evolved, and we're all, you know, like we have cars, and we're all like it's current society. So I thought that was kind of interesting because he lost his family, and presumably all of Mars is long since dead.
They're all
as
dead.
in,
Yeah.
like as in like, well, Mars is a dead planet to us, but like he left it right when it was crashing down, kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of cool. Because the idea that they're just like on Mars right now living, and like he got pulled through space and he's on Earth and they were all dying, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But like the idea that he got pulled through time and space like made it a little more interesting to me, I guess. And the villain on that note was very interesting as well, because he didn't get pulled through time. He just like landed. They like abandoned him on Earth essentially while Cro-Magnon Man was like walking around. So he spent
that's the thing.
like a millennia on Earth.
But so are Martians immortal? That part I didn't understand. Do they just live forever?
So no, John Jones says something to the effect of like, we had no idea he would survive this long. That shouldn't have happened. Like, it was very odd that, he thinks it's due to their frozen shape stasis.
Okay, yeah. So
like,
maybe he's
that
just
like prolonged
his cells
his life.
don't age or something because
he's
frozen.
Something weird about like locking them into a certain shape, like prolonged their life, like an indefinite amount.
Okay.
And I could be way off on this, but I feel like Charn specifically really focused on heightening his like psychic abilities to the point where
he talked about how he harnessed it. Yeah,
he's like almost like a wraith. Like he can't really, like, physically he's very frail. I did think he was a good foil to Jean, because John is very physically powerful and Charn is psychically powerful. So like John can't really fight him on the same level.
Yeah, because Charn can just like shut his brain down. Yeah.
And I also like, we kind of talk about sometimes how things should be adapted for TV or movies. And I'm not saying this should specifically be done, but like the overall concept of a Martian, like if you were to have an HBO True Detective season type vibe, and it turns out at the end that it was a fucking Martian is the one that's in charge of this like hillbilly gang that's kidnapping people, and he's been on Earth for like hundreds of thousands of years. I thought I kind of wish they had leaned more into like a horror aspect. Not that there wasn't horrific scenes in this comic. Yeah, I can't explain it because I feel like it's there, like a good story is there, and it's a good villain. The concept.
On that note, I had the same thought as I was reading it, similar at least, thinking like if they were going to make a Martian Manhunter movie that somehow entailed his origins, this would be a great one to pull from. Like, assuming they did it differently and done right. Well, of course, if it's live action, then the real life scenes are going to be grounded and real looking. So like you've got that right off the bat because it's real actors. But like if they went more crazier with like the Mars scenes, and then it was like juxtaposed with this should almost have been two different artists, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like we did
Strange Adventures had
exactly, like Strange Adventures was like, and they weren't that drastically different, but one was very grounded in realism and the other one was a little more cartoony. But if they had taken that idea and done that with this, I think it almost would have worked better. It would have made the Mars scenes, Rossmo's art, like just blow off the page if he was drawing the art for the Martian scenes, and then you switch to like real life, so to speak, and it's like way more grounded artist. That would have been a really good juxtaposition for those types of scenes.
My main complaint is for the Martian stuff. So I guess I've been reading too much about the Ukraine stuff. I guess something about Russians. The Martian stuff, I didn't feel like it was enough. Like I wish for example, so the main thing is what we get about Mars is basically like the apocalypse on Mars, like the last month on Mars is what we're shown, and it ends because of Ronmir's curse is like a mind disease that causes Martians to burn up and die. I really don't feel like Orlando went into enough depth as to like the origin how it worked, why it worked. I mean, he made some veiled comments because John's wife is a scientist, and she made some comments of like, if our Grand Council would only admit that it exists, it would somehow stop the curse from existing. So I think he was trying to make some comment on like AIDS and other STD crises we've had in the past, and like slow-footed government responses to pandemics and things like that, which fine, but I just don't feel like it was developed. I just didn't really get a clear enough idea.
I agree with you. I don't think it was developed enough, but I really enjoyed the concept of it. Like the idea of like the thought, what do they call it? The thought spectrum?
The thought stream.
The thought stream, yeah. So like I like the idea of the thought stream. I like that they're all connected with their mental abilities. But like, and the idea that like a thought could be like poison to them is interesting in and of itself. I agree it wasn't like rounded out enough to make it make sense or make it the stakes weren't there. The danger wasn't there. I understood that it was a coming danger, but that was kind of all you understood about it. Like you didn't really get enough of it to comprehend how dangerous it was going to be, other than that, like somebody said literally, it's all going to end in a month. And he's like, oh, I only have a month. And then his daughter's like, in a month, I get to take my shape. And you're just like, oh, no. But like, that's a kind of all you knew was like a timeline was coming. Like you didn't know also, how bad it was, sort of. I don't know.
But I think Patrick made the point that it was 12 issues, but could have been 6. So I just... Yeah, I feel like we could have gotten much more of this.
Exactly,
and made it much more worth.
Yes, it was.
You could have kept it 12 and dove in way more into what's going on.
Because what was it? I mean, my understanding is that if you believe in Ronmir,
I think they were just calling it that. I think it's just
Ronmir's curse. But it's like, I don't know if it was like a god or something. Yeah.
Are they actually weak to fire, or what? Is it just a mental thing where they catch on fire if they believe that it's real? And it's like he goes to the brothel, and it's like he doesn't want the guy who owns the brothel to let people who are infected by the curse in. And it's like, how do you even know they're infected until they catch on fire? And the guy was like, I only allow clients in. All my clients have the curse. And then he catches on fire like right in front of Jean. I was like, I don't understand how you.
That was very confusing.
What the symptoms are? Why are you on fire? Are you doing this to yourself because it's a mental disease, or are you actually on fire? I don't.
Well, there was also the subplot of them like having a hidden section of their mind that they could escape to.
The Hermitage,
which cuts them off from the thought stream, but the Hermitage. So like the idea that like they could all solve this problem very simply by not being connected for like X amount of time, and then they could figure it all out makes like very little sense to me. Like a society that's this vast, that's been going on for this long, you'd feel like they'd have like, they obviously have a failsafe, but none of them chose to use it. Like he was the only one that's like, cut ourselves off, at the end kind of thing. And I'm just like, why isn't there like, I don't know, thousands and thousands of them doing that same thing because it's the last ditch effort to not die, but they're all just dying and like it's you know what I mean? Like there was like little plot holes like that I was like, what? Yeah. Like why would he be the only one that's like, just do this? I know it's unheard of and it's like or forbidden, so to speak, to like cut yourself off from the thought stream and live in your hermitage. But like, why not? Why, like if all of the humanity was dying and we had this weird ability to like, well, if I don't say words out loud to my wife and children, they won't die. Like, do you know how fast I would stop talking? You know what I mean? Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's like a little bit of like that going on that I'm like, I don't really get that part of it, but
like to Al's point about it, this was 12 issues and I felt like 11 and 12 were the same exact issue. Like
they were the same. The fight, the ending fight between John and Charn was the same fight for 2 issues that it didn't need to be.
And John is he gets in a car accident in the beginning, and he's in a melted form for like 2.5 issues. It's like to Al's point about like not deep diving enough on Martian culture. Like, why wouldn't they all go into their hermitages? It'd be like asking everyone, like Birdbot, like you're taking away one of their most salient senses, I guess. It'd be like asking every human on the planet to wear blindfolds every day for however many days when half the population probably doesn't even believe the curse is real. Like he could have delved more into Martian. Like I did say he did a good job with the world building with it, and he did, but I feel like there was a lot left on the table. Is that an expression? Like
well, the other, I mean, another complaint I had is, okay, so about Martian Manhunter as a character specifically. A book like this should be, I think the idea behind this book was he's a crooked cop, goes through shit, and comes out of it the Martian Manhunter you know and love in the JLA. I don't understand, like, at the end of this, what I don't like. How did he become the Martian Manhunter from the JLA by the end of this? I didn't get that. That didn't come through to me. I know that he spent the 2 minutes in his own mind fighting his own shame, but that doesn't take you from crooked cop who was about to mind wipe his partner in issue 1 to protect his own ass to being the logical, mature core of the Justice League of America. Like that transition didn't happen in this comic. But the comic tells you it did. Well, that's what I mean. The comic is telling you, oh, that transition happened, but it didn't actually show us that.
Because and we're not really going issue by issue, but when he is like Mead, his partner is Mead. He's like, I'm not as strong as Charn because I am not over the trauma I experienced after Mars died. And if I go battle my demons, I will be powerful enough to fight him. And so I'm thinking when he goes into his subconscious, I think he says he has to fight 3 demons. And the demons are shame, anger, and duty. And they are all just giant monsters that he physically just fights. Except for shame,
shame that he lets defeat him. Yeah.
But the dialogue, like there's nothing, he's not making any revelations about himself. The dialogue is just like, how can these monsters be so powerful? What's going on? It just, there was no character development in those scenes. It was just like, oh, he's literally just fighting. I thought the fact they were in his subconscious, it would be like a deep dive into his psyche and
more like
past,
a mindfuck. Yeah.
And it was literally, he just fought them with his fists. And I was like, what the fuck am I reading right now?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like in the first issues, he is a cowardly ex-crooked cop who's about to mind wipe his partner to protect his fragile secret. And then at the end, he's got a cape on, and the author is basically saying, see, this is the Martian Manhunter you know. But we didn't see, there was no actual growth. It's just, it happened, trust me.
Yeah, it's this panel right down here.
Yeah, right. And so that is
be the Martian Manhunter, and it's just like that was not a great revelation.
Yeah, but so that's another big complaint, just on a character level, is I don't feel like the comic showed the character growth that it sold to us.
Right,
that happened.
Speaking of Miss Martian, Patty, were you frustrated that Ashley Adams wasn't
what? You mean Ashley
Adams?
When Sean gave her, talked to her as a Martian, I was like, dude, her name's Ashley, bro. She's Ashley. It's not.
Well, why not make that Megan? Why not? It's red. It's Black Label. Who cares?
I don't understand. I don't understand what Black Label is exactly. So I guess
it's free from continuity. Number 1.
Well, that's what I didn't get. So it's not Martian.
It's not Miss Martian. No,
it's not Miss Martian. It's somebody else.
Which means there's another Miss Martian out there. I don't know. Well, in this story,
Miss Martian, I guess, canonically is an actual Martian.
She's a white Martian.
Yeah. So that's another thing. I did enjoy.
You can't say white anymore, Patrick. It'll get.
She's a white Martian. I did enjoy in the past. It's been white, red, and green that were annihilated by the white. The white, it was a war, and that's why Mars ended, and that's why in Justice League there is some white Martians left over, they're still around, kind of thing. And so I did enjoy the non-traditional take on the destruction of Mars. I thought it was interesting. Because there was white Martians in the Mars scenes, amongst what was going on.
Yeah, but there was also gold Martians. There was gold skins.
Yeah, and there's red ones too, I think. But well, not in this, but or maybe there was. I don't know. the idea that it's a different scenario. It's not just like a world war that wiped out all the Martians. Like it's kind of more. It's way more interesting take. Again, it's the concept is there. The execution was lacking, sort of like across all spectrums.
Yes,
of the book.
I think that's like the big note for this book is that the concepts are all great and the execution.
That's why I was like,
kinda
I'd love to see this as a
lackluster.
movie. Because the concepts are there. If someone took this and boiled it down and made it streamlined, like we were saying, for like a film, versus a 12-issue book, if it was boiled down to like a film, like this would make a really good movie. Like I think this would be a really good introduction to Martian Manhunter. For most people that don't know who Martian Manhunter is, this would be a really good take on this character. It's a fresh idea. It's not just like World War. It's like it's a very different concept of a thought poisoning the minds of all the people on the planet. Like, I really like that aspect of it, mixed with it's also his origin story, so that's perfect for a movie too, kind of thing. So there's a lot of good things that could come out of this, but if you just went straight by the book, like, take this concept and move it, push it forward, push it beyond what it's at. No.
Just a right turn of a point that has nothing to do with what we're talking about that I want to make. Many times on this podcast, we've talked about the word daddy. I want to talk about the word da.
Da? Yeah.
I hate that shit.
I thought it was
that is fucking little blob kid called him da.
Fucking little blob kid. That's his daughter, Al.
I don't like that. Call him dad or something. Even daddy is better than dad.
Also, I know her name's Kim, but it's Kahim, and that was
it's Kim.
She's
but
I
know
dad.
And I don't know how do you say
like
Is it Maria, like Maria, but Myria, or is it?
It's Mairia. I think it was Mairia.
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 I don't know. His wife's name was very confusing to me. I read it differently every time, and then all I could think about was Patrick mispronouncing Moira Taggart's name, and I just started laughing every time I read it.
Wait, stop, Joe, stop. Patrick, say the first
Moira McTaggart.
Say Miss McTaggart's first name, Patrick.
Myra.
No. No.
Moira.
Yes.
Moira.
Okay, we got it.
Moira McTaggart.
Moira.
At any rate, I couldn't say his wife's name for the life of me. I reread it like 7 times, and then I just started laughing because all I could think about was Patrick saying Moira.
But level with me. It didn't bother you that his fucking blob kid called him dad?
No, I thought it was fucking adorable. I loved her. I will say when she fucking died, and she died after learning her dad was a piece of shit, and she died knowing that she accidentally, because the way his family dies is they're in their hermitages, and there's
they're protected.
Explosion, and the daughter gets scared and goes into the thought stream
and shocked and seeks safety in the thought stream.
And so
which causes her to catch the disease.
Exactly.
Yes, it's horrifying.
Her story
that was heart wrenching.
Tragic.
That part I liked. I liked a lot.
But you might as well. I mean,
in a bad way.
It took me like 20 years to realize my dad was a piece of shit. So I guess it's better she figured it out
when she was
younger,
only a few megacycles old.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, how they had a baby was very interesting.
That was interesting for sure. Yeah.
Like she's the thought that they had, and then they just expunge her out. That'd be like having sex with somebody, and in the middle of having sex, thinking that you might want to have a baby, and then suddenly there's a baby on the floor, and you're like, "Oh shit!"
Well, I did like too how
I guess we're parents now.
Well, because we get 2 scenes of them fucking. So one scene is they just kind of become a blob or whatever, and then they have sex, and like it's great. And then this scene where they're giving birth is kind of interesting because again they're in a blob, but it's kind of. It has like feet out to stabilize it as it's about to birth. I thought it was cool. Yeah, that was
again. There was little aspects of the Martian life that I was like, oh, they really notched that up to 10. Like, good work there.
Yeah.
Like I liked the concept. I'm granted, like Al was saying, they fell a little short on this with imagination, maybe. But like, I liked the idea that they're blobs and then they take shape at a certain point in life. That's a fascinating aspect.
Well, and they also, I think, at another point, John and Iria talk about having other children, and it's sort of I kind of like that construct of 2 people have to. I mean, without commenting on how it works for humans, but the idea that 2 people just have to both consciously at the same time just decide to make a child, and then that can happen is pretty interesting. Again, I don't want to comment on how it works for us, but ain't quite that.
I mean, it can be.
Ain't quite that
but
easy.
it's not.
Look, it could be even easier than two people
Yeah.
consciously deciding to have a child, but
So
not usually how it works.
the other aspect of this that I really, really liked is that Martian Manhunter has always just been like way OP and like he's Superman, but like, and yes, fire is his weakness, so that's way more common than kryptonite or whatever. But like the telepathy and like everything that and the shape shifting on top of super strength, flight, heat vision, invisibility. He's got like so many powers.
Yeah, we've
like,
mentioned
it's
this before.
Insane.
It's
insane. And so the tying all of that into to the mental abilities of them, I really liked, because it made it less overpowering and more like I can just do all of these things with my body because my mind is like fluid and can kind of, it made him seem less all powerful and more like, I don't know, more well-rounded, and it's all just kind of tied to this one concept. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I thought that was a little more interesting than just being like, it's Superman, but plus invisibility and shapeshifting and telepathy. And you're just like, geez, man, come on. Like so many powers. Like they've dumbed him down in the Justice League cartoon. Like he's very underpowered. Like they drag all of his powers down to like more, he's more just he's not even much of a shapeshifter. He's more of like a telepath, like it's like less, he's strong and he can do stuff, but like it's, that version of that, this is kind of like taking that idea of like depowering him a little bit and making it grounded in this one concept of like having the telepathy be the main thing, or really just the control over your body with your mind, kind of thing, being the main actual power, and all those other things are just kind of like a subset of that ability.
Well,
I really enjoyed that.
I did like, so Charn is kind of teased. I don't think he really shows up till maybe issue 4 or 5.
I think 5 maybe.
Mead discovers that her partner, John Jones, who coincidentally is actually John Jones.
That's the one part I hated.
Yeah, I also did. I was like, that was so...
Because traditionally, John Jones takes on the name John Jones as his Earth name. And like, that's why he's John. But the fact that there's a dude named John Jones... and he's John Jones, and then like they find each other somehow, and that's the life he takes over. I'm like, but that's a little too coincidental. It's very different if he's like, I'll take an Earth name, John Jones. Right. Like that makes sense. But like the other way around,
John Jones there's a famous UFC fighter named John Jones. It's
sure. And what are the chances of him meeting a Martian named John Jones?
What's a famous UFC fighter?
What's a famous UFC?
But
well, I mean, some of them are famous.
Chuck Liddell. That's the last person.
That's all I know.
Well, that's another UFC fighter who is not John Jones.
No, but so going back to Joe's point about how Martian Manhunter is not overpowered. There is his partner and him are working separately because she is pissed that he hid this secret that he's a Martian from her. I can't believe he did that. But she captures a guy that's related to the kidnappings, and she tells Martian Manhunter to go, interrogate him. So you're thinking Martian Manhunter, because he's this like hillbilly piece of trash. You're thinking John is about to like obliterate this guy's mind.
Yeah.
Instead, Charn is like already inside of the guy, and just like
he had like a mind trap.
Yeah, I thought that was like a fun little heel turn in that moment, because I was expecting.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I was like,
also. Another part of that aspect of that is it wasn't even like he had taken that guy's mind over. He just fucked Martian Manhunter from the beginning. Like he wasn't even in the right hallway. Like when the cop finds him in the end and he's like, "Are you okay? You're not even in the right wing of the building."
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Where is he again? Like kind of thing. And you're just like, damn. Because at the time you really do think like, oh, that's the villain. And then you're like, and he's like somehow shapeshifting or something, or tricking everyone with his mind powers. And then that's not it at all. He's just, that dude's in another cell down the hall or something. Like, that's amazing.
Well, that's why I wish, this was a point Patrick's already made basically, but that the end fight between Charn and Manhunter ended up just being John punching him and sort of winning is because Charn is introduced as such a 2,000 years of developing his his telepathy.
Yeah,
and
but
he's
apparently
so much
all it takes
stronger
is
than
John
John,
Jones,
and that's
one issue of
and
fighting his demons.
right. And it's a little deflating that like, oh, all it took was just half an issue of fighting his own shame, and now he just gets to win automatically. Like that was a little bit. It just felt like
The end fight was
of
pretty anticlimactic for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a few points. Did y'all feel like
go
the
ahead.
art kind of implied that the story was taking place in the 1980s, even though they had like cell phones? I feel like the cars they drove and the wardrobes of the people and like the houses and the gas stations, everything seemed very of yesteryear.
Well,
No, Patrick. So Patrick, to answer your question, I think Orlando just made a mistake because I think he wants it both ways. Because he wants you to think, oh, it's a Martian Manhunter origin story set in the early 90s or late 80s.
Right.
But he puts touchscreen iPhones in it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Because I think he's just maybe made a mistake.
To Patrick's point,
it definitely is supposed to take place decades ago.
But before I lose
messing
my
up-
train of thought, though,
go ahead.
when he's fighting shame, the most in-depth thing that happens is that Meade, who is a lesbian and who has accepted the fact she's a lesbian, she's proud of it, and that's why she got fired and had to transfer.
So she's
to a different
not.
station. She's bisexual.
She's bisexual.
So she tells John that you can't fight shame; you have to embrace it. And I feel like for her that makes sense because embracing who you are, like that's not your sexual orientation is nothing to be ashamed of. But John was a crooked cop who did terrible fucking things. And the scene of him fighting shame and embracing his shame is literally just like, again, I needed to see him have a conversation with himself being like, I did fucked up shit and this is who I am. And this is
it was really more like him coming to terms with the death of his daughter and
yeah,
wife.
that's what
which they did okay, but like it wasn't really him confronting his shame or
I agree. Patrick, you're right. I agree with your point, Patrick. Like we're just not shown the growth of the change in any meaningful way. We just don't get that.
I just thought that he was trying to draw a parallel. That I liked that line of embracing your shame instead of fighting it coming from Meade, but I needed more for it to apply to Jean's experience.
And you're right. Like coming to grips with your bisexuality is not coming to grips with the fact you were a crooked policeman. Those are not comparable. You're right about that.
I needed him to like kind of have a conversation with himself and be like, oh yes, I was responsible for my daughter and wife's deaths. And there's this side to me that is, the dark side. And I need to overcome this. And I needed to be different from who I was. And I need to change into a hero and make up and repent for all this terrible shit I did.
For instance, his hermitage was him hiding the fact that he was corrupt from his wife. So he made up the lie that he's hiding all the horrible shit he sees as a cop from her, so she doesn't have to deal with it. And she's like, I deal with that all the time. I work in the hospital.
Right.
Like I'm dealing with the curse all the time. Like you don't have to hide the curse from me in your job. Like I get it. It's out there. Like I'm dealing with it as with patience as the same way you're dealing with it on the streets with like crime and whatever corruptness that's happening on our planet. But they never reconcile that. They just kind of go like, at the end, she just goes, wait, you were just hiding that you were corrupt? And like, that was it. Like, there was no like, there wasn't like a conversation, even with his wife would have worked, like him going like, him having to sit down and talk his wife through all the corruption and like why he did what he did and like why he hid it from her and he was wrong to do it and so on, would have worked great in that spot, but instead he just kind of like embraced his shame. And they like melded into a white space or something. And you're just what? That was so empty. Like there was nothing, there wasn't a really, that moment could have been heavy with like gravitas, but like, it was just emptiness. And it was just like, okay, I get you did it, like it happened, but like, it didn't feel, there was no weight to it, like it didn't feel like it was, there's something going on.
If anything, I feel like John Jones, the actual police officer that died, was like a really stand-up dude, and John Jones, like going back to the art, there are some really great panels. He buries John Jones and he's standing over the burial mound and he's taking the form of John Jones, but his fingers are super long and they're dug into the soil. and he's like absorbing all of the memories. I guess after you die, you can still.
Yeah, he mentions it
memories.
later on when he's delving into the dead body.
Yeah,
he
When he
mentions
does
how
the
like
death
humans only have like
topsies or
3
whatever.
minutes of memory in their cells before like it all dies. Like whereas a Martian, he'd have plenty of time to be like, let me thought topsy you, and like I can figure out everything that you experience your entire life. But with a human, it's like it only lasts so long, and you need to do it like right away, kind of thing, because like your cells start to break down, and they don't retain like the memories the same way a Martian would. But yeah, you're right. Like it's a little.
Well, it's almost like the actual John Jones's influence over him is what made him a good person, and not.
I kind of agree with that.
to
Also,
get
it like to his partner's credit, it wasn't just that he was lying that he was a Martian. It was that he was also impersonating her partner, who she loved.
No,
you know?
she. I mean, outside of the fact that she was just screaming in a Southern accent, like I said, like I couldn't read her dialogue without. And Joe, to your point, how sometimes the facial expressions didn't match up with what they were saying. I felt like she was always startled and yelling about something. But no, I felt like her reactions were completely reasonable to everything that was happening. Like she kind of kept her shit together. If I were to crash my car and my partner is a melting Martian, I wouldn't have pulled him out of the car and then helped him. And then he's a melting monster for like 2 issues coming after her, like being like, and then he's again,
well, he's not coming after her. He's just
he's there. He's like, listen to me. And then he goes, I think there's one of the issues where he's like, no one would believe you anyways. What are you going to tell people that you like?
Yeah, that I'm an alien,
shit, man. Like what the fuck? Like for it to be 12 issues, there was so much time.
I feel like the first thing, if I was John Jones, the first thing out of my mouth would be, your partner's been dead for X amount of years. You have known me. You have trusted me for this long. I need your help. You know, like kind of thing. Like the first thing to say would be like, I'm a strange new thing that you're experiencing right now, but we've been together for a long time. You just haven't known it. You know, kind of thing.
But
like
he's a piece of shit. So instead he tries to mind wipe her.
You guys are harping on that a lot. He thought about that for like one panel.
I mean, but it's still like pretty well, okay. I don't want to talk about that specifically.
That's not that insane. I hide who I am. Like I don't want to do this to you. I trust you and love you.
Well, I have a big complaint about the treatment of Mead, because I feel like at the end, and I know we've been talking about the end mostly, but that's
where everything wraps up.
Yeah, but I feel like I wish she had more of a role in everything. Then like at the end, John's like, I'll go fight the Martian villain, you go do a side quest that doesn't matter. And then he goes and fights Charn with Asley Adams or whatever, and they both defeat Charn. It's another kind of trope of like, let's split up and you do that and whatever. But the fact that like Mead doesn't have to do anything to help defeat the actual villain, I feel like really devalues everything she's contributed up until that moment.
An add-on note to that is that she even goes out of her way to be like, John, and like tries to reach out to them telepathically. And then she's like, what the fuck am I doing? That's not going to work. There's no way I can like communicate with him after only this amount of time of knowing what's going on. And then she goes, I guess we're on our own kind of thing. And I'm like, God, what the fuck? Like, it would have been great if John was like, oh, I'm here, and blah, blah, blah. And like, but it's just, it's like radio silence. It's like she reaches out with her mind and then like nothing happens. And she's like, fuck it, I guess I'm just a cop right now. You know, and you're just what the fuck? That's the end? That's your thing?
Yeah, I just wish she was more centrally involved in the
very
meaningful contribution to ending the conflict rather than just go do the side quest.
Yeah, I'll lead the cops while you fight the supervillain. Yeah,
but I'm going to actually defeat the main problem. I don't know. This isn't the only comic to do something like that. But because the whole thing is like this Mead character, we're never going to read about again. Like she's not ever going to be in any other DC comic.
Yeah. Nor is
the idea.
Ashley Adams.
Yeah, I don't think. Either.
But I don't know what the right word is, but like I feel like it just cheapens Mead's contributions to the rest of the book. That it's like even at the end, she doesn't help defeat Charn, so she's really just a side supporting character in this gritty detective novel that we're getting because it's a genre piece and really has nothing to do with what Martian Manhunter will become after this. And I don't know. That's just all. I didn't like how all that was handled. I agree. It just felt like it cheapened the rest of her contributions to the comic.
What do you think about Charn's plan overall? Like what like the overall villain
of
plot?
course didn't make any fucking sense because he's just
Well,
a mustache
but that's-
twirling villain in a basement.
what-
Not any sense.
That's what I thought. He was a great villain because Al, you said he's been on Earth for he'd been on Earth for hundreds of thousands
however
of
long.
years.
Right.
He had lost his fucking mind.
Mm.
And it was
Definitely
like
had.
he'd been experimenting on humans for hundreds of thousands of years. Like the guy was out of his mind. He was terrifying. He was unhinged. Nothing he was doing was really making sense. But like I think that's what was creepy about it, because he did not have his shit together, and he's running an army of these hillbilly nutcases. Like
he's running a
doing his
human
bidding.
trafficking ring to get experimental people so he can experiment on them. And it's like that part alone was dark as fuck, because they're like, when they raid the one pig farm that has like humans
all the
trafficking
dead
going on.
bodies, yeah.
First of all, it's pig farm, and they're like, there's no people there, so that's horrifying. So you're just like, how many people are buried under this ground right now?
The thing I don't get is like, it's just a flashback where he's the god of the Cro-Magnons.
Yeah.
When do you
Yeah, for like a
transition
second.
from being the god to I'm gonna hide in a chicken basement in Colorado?
Yeah, I don't
Like,
know.
when does that transition happen?
Around the year 108,000, probably.
Okay, that's what he decided. Like, I need to change the pace. I'm gonna go hide in a basement.
Jean's like, this guy shouldn't fucking be alive anymore. Like, how he's holding on with strength of will. Like, he's fortified his psychic presence so much.
That would have been a really good issue, by the way.
Yeah,
Just like
that would've-
all
just the background
Charn
of
for like a
him.
full
Yeah.
fucking issue of just been like, this is what,
Yeah.
and like they could literally be like, and he hid for 100,000 years or something to like repair his mind or something, like
Also-
anything to make this make sense. You know, like would have
Yeah,
been
but also
really
to an
cool.
earlier point, all his psychic building up didn't really mean shit, because as soon as the Manhunter,
Well, I think it did.
not really, as soon as John faced his shame, it's like, well, all your 100,000 years of training don't matter.
Well, I mean, but so the idea is like how much of that is used just to keep himself alive at this point and to keep his body functioning.
But
Like I think there's
that's
more
not at
to it
all.
than-
I mean, that's not at all explored or established in this. Really.
It's established. I don't think it's explored. It's talked about.
I don't
It's mentioned. I
don't
should
know.
say.
I know this is a point I already made, but I wish Mead. I don't know. I feel like Mead was really misused as a character in this.
Yeah.
I feel like at the end, her real only purpose is just to be an ornament in this detective genre piece where she's the partner instead of a really impactful character to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a
feel like
shame because she should have had a bigger role.
Yeah, I feel like her whole role was to like be a parallel of the human experience that is similar to what Jean is going through. Like that was
every aspect of her backstory is just like to mirror Jean's backstory in a way, but the connection is loose at best. And then I think them bonding and her coming to terms with John Jones being John Jones and being an alien is well done. I do like that aspect of it. Just like her coming to terms with him being an alien.
Yeah.
And I think
that
it's
was
done
my favorite issue.
I think the only reason it's done super well is because it stretches on too long. And like they have enough time to give her enough beats of like, fuck you. And then the next issue is like, okay, maybe. And then the next issue is she's like, all right, fine, but I don't like you. And then the next issue is like, all right, let's come to terms. And then like, like the only reason that little aspect of her story arc makes any logical or well-rounded sense is that they have too much time to deal with it almost, like, and it could have been done better, faster, I think, but it's still there. It's still good. I think.
I thought the most interesting relationship was the issue when she comes to terms and wants to be friends with the Martian Manhunter, because it's flashbacks to her experience with the actual John Jones, who was actually like a really good guy. And I really liked their dynamic more than I was like, I almost just want to read a comic about the two of them just like dealing with human shit and the bullshit of being a black man and a bisexual woman working in a rural town police force.
Just playing racquetball. Yeah, just playing
some racquetball.
Yeah.
Like their connection, that was good writing. The dialogue, seeing John Jones like care for his mother and like be very protective of her and bring Meade into the fold and like they were family and they
and then there's like a throwaway line later where she's like, was that even John when his mom died? And he's like, no, he had been well dead since then.
Yeah, that was fucked up. Yeah, that was kind of fucked up when he's like, no,
Christ.
John had died already.
Because like the memory of her that she's having like a couple pages beforehand, it was like his mom, John Jones's mom, was like, oh, he never brings anybody by from the force. Like, you're the first person he's ever brought home and shown, like kind of like shown this aspect of his life to. And then she's like, was that even him at the funeral? Was that you? And he's like, yeah, that was me. You're like, God damn. So he wasn't even there for his mom's day. It was just little, and I was like, oh, okay.
Human John Jones, though, empathetic towards a closet bisexual woman.
Yeah.
Lives with his mother and takes care of his mother. Is gay, right?
I mean, good chance.
Maybe.
He's probably
But
gay.
again, it goes to that like weird setting, how it felt like it was the 1980s, but it's supposed to be the 2000s. And
no, but I think it is supposed to be the 80s. He just made the mistake
I don't think it's
of
supposed to be the
including
80s. It's just supposed to be
it's
not
the Manhunter's
right
origin. He's from the 60s.
It should have been.
Like, it's the origin of the Manhunter.
It
right?
should have been.
Al, do I need to explain how
80s.
time works in comics?
I guess
But I'm just
not,
saying,
yeah.
because this is Black
I guess
Label
that's it.
and it's the Martian Manhunter's a retelling of his origin story, you could have said it in the 60s or 70s or 80s.
Yeah, it would have been fine.
Why didn't they just do that? Like, why?
You didn't need fucking cell phones.
You didn't need cell phones.
There
for
was
this
zero
story.
reason to have cell phones in this.
You didn't
show,
need
It's
or
true.
this
They
book.
don't have any like narrative plot importance at all. Yeah.
So like,
You
I just
really
don't
not at all.
understand, because it would also make more sense that this is like the beginning of Jean's turning into who he is in the Justice
Patty,
League.
I've been meaning to say this like 100 times over now, but like that's why they say years ago, but it's the present day in the story because it's years ago in terms of Martian Manhunter.
Oh, well,
and the
that
Justice
makes
League.
no fucking sense.
No, it
At all.
doesn't
Well,
make
I
sense,
think
because
that
it's
to
a
your point-
prequel. It's a prequel to what is now Martian
To
Manhunter.
Patty's point though, I'm pretty sure in the earlier issues they say like years ago in the past, and it's like Martian Manhunter in the past when he first meets Diane Meade, and then it says like right now, and it's like the current stuff that's going on. But then by issue 6, the right now is referred to as years ago.
But
It's a very
No,
confusing.
it-
There's a
no,
point in which it gets confusing. As all I'm
Joe,
saying.
no, you're both wrong. From issue 1, it refers to a few years ago. It never refers.
Oh, is that what it says? Okay.
it sometimes
never
refers to
now.
it sometimes refers to before.
Right. There's before. So
There's before and a few years ago. A few years
right,
ago
so
is the present.
is
in
the
the book.
present. Right. A
Yeah,
few years
and then
ago is the
before
present
is
in the
before.
book,
Yeah. Okay.
And then, yeah.
I swear there was a time when it was
Wait,
when it should have
so
said a
what?
few years ago, and it said now. That's all I'm saying.
When is now?
I swear.
When is now? When is now?
When
then?
is now is the present. The present. We're
now
in the
is
present.
the Martian
Do we need to do
Manhunter
a
is in the
Spaceballs spin?
JLA. Yeah, it's in the JLA. He's the Martian Manhunter. We know.
Yeah, now is
Is the
now.
now.
Yeah,
That
now
makes
is the
no-
now.
How did y'all come to that conclusion? Because that went way
Because it's an
above my
origin
head.
story.
Because when he
of an
says
existing
now I'm the
character.
Martian Manhunter, and we're still in the timeline of a few years ago, meaning like that's.
But I mean, the first issue didn't start with him in the watchtower of the JLA being like, "Let me tell you a story." From a
Yes,
few years
and that's why it
Yeah, but
makes
that's-
no
you just
sense
gotta
because the
figure it
story
out.
is set in a present time, which is in the past, but that should be present
Okay,
in this story.
No, it's a few years ago.
I like it even less now.
It was
That
so
really pisses
confusing.
me
That-
off. That makes no
Patrick's
fucking
right.
sense.
That was confusing. It was weird. I
Also,
understand the vernacular and what they're doing with it, and it's like kind of a play on like this is present time, but it's also a few years ago. But it was very confusing when you're dealing with
Also, on,
flashbacks that frequently. It's very confusing.
This is a topic shift, but on Mars, John lived in the suburbs of a city called Greg.
Reg. Yeah, I mean,
Greg. This is Greg.
go
Oh, yeah,
Reg.
go Reg.
Go
Reg. Reg.
Oh my god, so confusing. Because issue 7 starts off with a few years ago, which makes me think this is a scene with Mead and the real John Jones. But she already knows he's a Martian. So I'm like, what's happening?
A few years ago is quote unquote now
the present,
in terms of the comic.
Yeah.
But the comic takes place as an origin story to the Martian Manhunter.
I do have one kind of bad point to make.
Yeah, let's hear a good thing, because I feel like my negativity has seeped into both.
Again, it's staying in line with our overall. It's staying in line with our overall idea that the concept is good, the execution's not great. Because in issue 12, the big battle between Charn and Martian Manhunter, Charn has basically imprinted every single one of the people he's killed over the hundreds of thousands of years. He's memorized their last dying moments of like terror, and he is throwing all those memories at John, like one after the other, which I thought was interesting how he uses weapons, like emotional memories as weapons. But then the stupid thing was, so who knows how many people he's killed. John overcomes him because the loss of his daughter and wife is a more painful memory than all of those people's deaths. And that's how Charn is beaten at the end. And then instead of just like disintegrating him, John places a small piece of Charn inside of every human on the planet as like a prison. And I just thought that was a really stupid fucking plan. Like, why are you putting a very powerful telepath inside of every human on the planet?
Even if you dissipate him into 8 billion jail cells. Wouldn't that
one weak-willed person for him to take over and
or even a small and then just like and then he's got 2 and then he's got 3 and then suddenly he's in every single one of our brains. Seems like a really bad move.
It reminded me of the same like dumb idea that he had in JLA Morrison's run, where he took the White Martians, and
it's exactly what it reminded me of. Yeah.
So again, like I like the idea of the psychic battle and using painful memories as weapons and how that would affect somebody. And I was like, oh, that's really cool that Charn is using the death, like the last thoughts of these people dying, as like things to like horrible things to really destroy his psyche.
Patrick, to your point about Char's punishment and how that reminded you of the first arc and Morrison and Porter's run on JLA.
Yeah.
In the back of the like TPB that it's I read it digitally, but it was the trade paperback digital version. But they have interviews with the creators. And one of the questions is kind of, what was your first introduction to the Martian Manhunter? And Steve Orlando mentioned that it was the Grant Morrison Porter run was the kind of his first introduction.
That was kind of mine too. I knew him before that, but the JLA had been kind of a joke before the Morrison run. It wasn't what it is now, it wasn't the JLA cartoon. So like, that was my first impression of him too. So I remember liking that a lot. And we've also since read those books and gone, these have some weak points. So if you're basing Martian Manhunter off of your memory of that, I completely see where you're coming from, kind of like, but at the same time, I'm like, I've reread those and they're not great. Also, that's a really bad plan.
Yep.
My first introduction to him was the Justice League cartoon show. Actually, I'd never heard of him. I'd never heard of him before. I thought he was actually a character they made up for the cartoon show.
I remember. So I forgot when Justice League or Unlimited came out. I mean, we were maybe middle school, but I remember just being baffled because I was like, every episode would reveal more powers he had. And I was like, oh, why isn't this guy just God? I was like, he's Professor X and Superman and Shadowcat, and
we've talked about this before. He's not Professor X.
Well, but it was just fascinating.
He's a mental radio. He's not like going into the astral plane and like talking to everyone on the planet at the same time.
Right.
He can like,
but it was just
talk
funny.
to 8 people at the same time.
But it was just funny because like episode by episode, you'd be like, oh, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
can
I know.
also
I
do
know what you're
this.
saying. I know what you're saying.
It's crazy.
No, like there was one episode because he'd already kind of displayed all of his powers, and I knew he could turn intangible, but he's fighting someone, and I can't remember what episode it is. But the guy goes to punch him, and then John just turns into like titanium, and like the guy breaks his hand on his. I'm like, oh, he can turn into like metal and stuff. What the fuck? He can transmute his body as well. What
You
the
can
hell?
do everything. You can do everything.
So could he just turn into kryptonite and fucking?
He
kill
probably
someone?
could. Yeah.
I think it's
he
just
could.
density. I don't think he's chemically altering his body.
Well, his skin like literally turns like shiny silver.
I think
cartoon.
he can make. I think he's basically.
Guys, we're having a serious conversation about
Yeah.
comic books. Let's not degrade ourselves by discussing a cartoon.
Listen, the Justice League cartoon is
I
one of the
guess.
best things ever.
No, I love the fuck out
Could
of that show. Are you kidding?
Metamorpho become kryptonite or not? Because it's not an Earth metal that he could.
No, theoretically he could. Also,
He could? Okay.
Firestorm can like literally make anything. So like,
Yeah,
could
he
just-
could make kryptonite.
Yeah.
My
Sorry, do you
last,
guys?
like-
There's like a ringing in my ear. Do you guys hear that?
Oh, what is it?
Is it just from
No.
my headphones, or I just this? Does this pass the Bechdel test? The Bechdel test. The Bechdel test.
test.
Does this pass the Bechdel test? The answer's probably no. Except it does. This one does.
It passed.
It made it. It passed.
That's
me
funny
and her
'cause on the
girlfriend talked.
I would
It
just
had
like
it.
right away. I'd be like, nope.
No, but it did because
Because it's 99% of the time.
It's
Yeah.
true. Most of it doesn't, but we do get some flashbacks to Mead and her core and her girlfriend talking into bed.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk
Quite a
about
bit of
that too much. Her background is
No.
that she's bisexual. Her girlfriend identifies as a lesbian, and the girlfriend is uncomfortable with the fact she's bisexual. They work at the same police station. The higher ups find out. They get pissed. They say either end the relationship and hide what you are, and keep your job, or get the fuck out. And Carol, her ex, hides who she is and keeps her job. And Mead like expresses who she is and leaves. But I guess my point is, it was interesting how it highlighted how Carol was very uncomfortable with the fact that Mead was bisexual.
Yeah.
And how like
yeah,
the whole
it did.
Martian world is like you can be anything and everything. They shapeshift. Like that's not even
Well,
Like
we've
gender-
discussed
like-
how they still seem to
Right.
have
Again, but though,
preferences
like,
for certain-
to your point, like it's weird that wasn't explored more since it seemed to be
Yeah.
such a central. I felt like he was trying to do something with that, comparing it to how that wouldn't really be an issue for a Martian, but it just didn't go anywhere. But I felt like there was like something there he was gonna do, and then
I
again, for this
think
to be
the
12 issues,
realization that
like,
real John Jones accepted for her for who she was had way more weight than her and Anja Owens like coming
yeah.
together. Yeah.
yeah,
Even
quick
to the point
note-
where he's like, I read your backstory and I was the one who like just went, did your background check or whatever. And I hid it from everyone else just in case you wanted to keep it hidden. And that's why I took you on as my partner. So you wouldn't have to go, like no one else would have to read that report or whatever.
Right,
Like he went
yeah.
out of his way to be like, oh shit, she needs help and I'm going to help her. And I'm going to keep it hidden without her even knowing that I know, just in case she needs to keep it hidden, because that's who I, like I was like, God damn, bravo, man.
Well,
like,
so to Patrick's
Not only
earlier
is he just
point,
helping her and wants to like her to be his partner, period. But like he happened to be the one that like read the backstory or the background check and was like, oh shit, I should probably not let anyone else read this in case it fucks up her career here, and I don't want that to happen, kind of thing. I thought that was cool.
yeah, but so to Patrick's earlier point about the lesbian bisexual dynamic.
Mhm.
So I was reading the interviews in the back. So Steve Orlando mentioned, and I'm not talking out of school, like this is in the interview, but he mentioned that he himself is half Jewish and half bisexual. Half Jewish and bisexual. I think a half bisexual is just
I think you're just one or the other.
is just gay or straight. He's half Jewish and bisexual.
Guys, I want to reveal
is
something
what
to you.
he
I'm half bisexual.
I'm half bisexual. Yep. Okay, sorry. Let me find my center. But he mentioned
Is that a
he's half
quarter? Is that a quarter sexual?
quarter
Or
sexual.
is it just
Yeah.
at that point?
You're
yeah.
yeah.
Did you cut it in half, or did you?
Yeah. Are you cutting? Are you cutting it in half vertically or horizontally?
Okay. I misspoke. He is half Jewish and fully bisexual. But he was talking about how that was the point of that scene, was to portray sort of like bi erasure in the eyes of the LGBT community. And,
yeah.
It's
definitely a thing for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so that was anyway, because Patrick, you mentioned it. So I just thought it was interesting because he did call it out in that interview of that was like the whole point of that scene is he was trying to.
Okay. It was more something he was,
sort of,
I don't know. I just felt like there was going to be a bigger conversation about it with John.
Yeah.
Like explaining to
There,
John
there should
why it's an
definitely
issue
have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
here. But
I don't find that their relationship, Diane Mead and Martian Manhunter, I don't find that their relationship is not fulfilled in that way. Like I did feel close, like I did feel like they came together. It was just a little, again, it's like everything we've been talking about this entire time. It's like the concept's there, it's just not executed super well. But that tiny aspect of it, I did sort of like, again, because I feel like they had almost too much time to get her on board with him.
Too much time,
like,
yes.
Yeah. Like, which for that aspect of the story worked great. But every other aspect of the story, I was like, too long on this, too long on that. I was, but I really appreciated those moments of her like gradually coming to terms with who he is now versus like her old partner.
Yeah.
I had one last thing I wanted to talk about before we do reviews, unless you guys have.
No, go ahead. No,
okay.
No, let's do it.
So we've touched on it, but the whole thing is Charn is kidnapping people. He kidnaps this girl named Ashley Adams. That's the case they're working on. And Ashley Adams. She has a pet iguana. Okay, so John finds the iguana.
The iguana is pretty.
This was like my favorite part of the entire run.
Yeah.
Jean links up mentally with the iguana, who we think has seen the murder. And the iguana's this was my favorite 2 panels of his art. The inside of what the iguana's like astral plane looked like, and the iguana's like a humanoid form, and it has a head, and Ashley's like a giant goddess.
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was great.
And this is kind of a great example of what I wanted to see more of from this story. He explains how the iguana thinks, how it doesn't have thoughts. Everything is based off his survival mechanism and how much fear something elicits from him. And that is
at first he has a lot of fear towards Ashley, and then eventually it becomes like
I mean, that's how I live my life normally.
Well, I think that's
just through fear.
No.
Yeah, I just live an anxiety-filled fear.
I'm the opposite of that. If there was Green Lantern rings, I would definitely have a yellow ring because I instill fear in others.
I have a red ring, I'm pretty sure.
Just vomiting rage.
But so I loved the iguana issue until, and I need you all to answer this for me. Did the iguana kill the parents? Did the iguana's tail shoot through the dad's chest? Is that what was happening?
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened.
What the fuck was that? At that point, at least make it a dog, like something believable. The iguana's tail shoots through a grown man's fucking chest, like clavicle cavity.
I think it was Charn like using.
Well, yes,
the iguana.
It's like
it's not like the iguana was just like, you know what, I'm gonna murder these people.
But how can iguanas do that? Can iguanas murder people like that?
No, I think it was just Charn like using a physical body with his brain. Like he was the iguana at that point.
So he had,
you know what I mean? Like he was
vulnerability and strength because of Charn.
Yeah, because he was using his mental powers to strengthen the body of a creature.
Again, I'm
not saying it makes sense.
It's just this book. It was like it would do something cool and interesting, and then immediately ruin it. I was like, if the iguana had just witnessed the murders, that'd be one thing, and that's what I thought was happening. For the iguana to viciously murder the parents with its tail of all things, it didn't even bite them or scratch them. It killed them with its fucking tail, is what it looked like.
But that's how iguanas whip their tails. Like that's how they defend themselves. It's part of the iguana experience.
Not only that, but not only is that part real. What? But really, if you go back and look at the crime scene, there's little like bloody iguana footprints and stuff. It's pretty clear, weirdly, with this art style, that it was like the iguana that murdered them. But like you're like, what? That's ridiculous. Like at the time, you're just like murdered bodies. It's an iguana. Like what the fuck? That would never happen. You didn't even know at the time it is an iguana. But the point is, like, if you look at the crime scene like frame of like Martian Manhunter and Diane Mead like in the room and they're looking at the dead bodies, there's little like claw marks everywhere. There are little, like blood streaks of like iguana claws, and it's just
But the thing
that's
that
kind
I
of
don't
funny
get,
that like it goes full circle and it's like it was the iguana. Like,
but the thing I don't get, so if an alien psychic took over an iguana's body and told that iguana, use your tail to stab Alessandro through the chest, it wouldn't physically be possible.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. It's not taking over an iguana's brain and telling it to do something. It's him embodying the iguana and using his mental abilities to literally like make a spear out of an iguana's tail and whatever.
I'm not sure.
It's insane. What do you guys think of this? Just a little wrap up of the funeral scene at the end.
You know, it was cute.
How did okay? Well, all right. Here's a question. How did John Jones save two worlds?
He did. He did.
Did they say that?
On his tombstone is savior of two worlds.
I think they mean like their internal worlds, like Mead.
Yeah, but he did because he didn't save Mars. He did not save Mars.
He also didn't save Earth either.
Well, no, he did because Charn would have destroyed all of humanity or something.
Because of John Jones?
They're talking about human.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, the human John Jones.
Inspired
the human John Jones.
Human John Jones inspired Ja'an to fight Charn. So he was somehow. So you can make the argument he helped save Earth. But Mars has been dead for 100,000 years.
You're reading this way too literally. Patrick's right.
And I think he's just talking.
They're talking about Martian Manhunter and Diane Mead. Those are the two worlds that he saved. He saved both of them because Ja'an is now embodying him, and he gave him a place on Earth.
Okay,
and John Jones saved Diane Mead's life in a different way.
If I was hiking the mountains of Colorado and I found that tombstone, I wouldn't know that. I would just say this man saved two worlds somehow.
Well, yeah, you're not supposed to know. Yeah, it's supposed to be vague. By the way, at some point, I need you to tell me what you want on your epitaph.
The ending is odd for Ashley. I feel like they don't really explore everything she went through.
Yeah, she's just kind of like, I guess I'll hang out with you.
They in no way. All right,
they vaguely reference that they're gonna like live in a house together. Like it's so like it's like, and we're starting our lives, and you're just like, okay.
It's like
they in no way address the fucked up shit that happened to this poor girl.
Oh yeah,
no, she's just kind of like, oh, I'm Martian now. Wonderful, I'm a hero. End.
Oh, my parents are dead. My parents are dead. Great.
Yeah. Murder.
Yeah.
And then it ends. Her last scene is her listening to like an Alex Jones InfoWars type video saying Martians are real and they're evil monsters, and it shows her getting like really depressed, and that's the end.
No,
of her
that's
story.
not true. The end is her and John's looking. Are they going to travel to Mars or something? It shows them looking at Mars.
No, they're looking at a little house at the end. At the end.
No, they're standing in front of the house, but looking up at Mars.
Yeah.
Isn't there a scene of like a little thought beam from John to Mars?
No. That's just space drawing. That's not a thought beam. He's looking past the house at Mars and looking at the house and going, and now I'm coming home. Like it's like as in like this is a little piece of Mars on Earth, I think.
All right.
It's a little more
poetic. I think Ashley's going to have to fight her three demons at some point because she did not 100%.
Process. She's got some deep shit in there. Well, who better to take her through it than Martian Manhunter, guys? Come on. Pass, fail? How do we do this?
I don't recommend or pass. I just say don't recommend or do recommend.
Yeah, we just recommend.
Don't recommend or do recommend. All right.
Pass is very ambiguous because when you refer to
because we've said the word pass and fail. We've said the word pass as in pass this book by, and pass as in it passes the test of our
whatever. Recommend or don't.
We've ruined the idea of pass. So like,
recommend
what are we
calling?
What are we calling it? Recommend or don't? That's the worst. All right. Anyway,
recommendations.
No, we already talked about this. No,
Al's a no.
That's it. Just say no.
We spent an hour. I've spent an hour and a half talking about this. I don't, my overall take is I don't really recommend this. I don't.
Okay. All right.
I'm
Patty?
sorry. I just don't really recommend it.
I also don't really recommend this. It started off kind of strong, interested, but then it really dragged. It almost felt like the DC head honchos were like, this needs to be 12 issues long, and they didn't have a story for 12 issues, and it just felt like, especially today re-reviewing it, it was like some of the issues were literally the same issue. Issue 11 and 12 are the same thing is happening.
It's a double issue, basically. Just
and again, like I felt, as we talked about, I think there was a lot more to explore and a lot more I wanted to know. And the fact that you had 12 issues and you didn't explore these more interesting things, and it just got very repetitive, and I don't like that. So I'd be hesitant to recommend it to anyone.
Art wise, I think there was a lot of strong things. I think it could be. I don't think that there could have been a better artist to choose for this, but I think it's a missed opportunity because, like I said earlier, I feel like this is a perfect candidate for two artists collaborating together. And I don't even mean like Earth scenes and Mars scenes. I mean, like with the way technology works and how artists can collaborate now on comic books, like they could have blended panels. They could have done something so much better with this concept than what is currently presented, that I feel like it was a huge missed opportunity for the art to be like next level in terms of what you can do in a comic. And he fulfills one half of that very, very well, and the other half not so good at all. And I think that was like a big takeaway for me, or negative takeaway for me, for the book as a whole, because the human aspects and like the grounded realism that should have been present in the book was vastly not there. And it was like trying to jam his style into like a detective story didn't work for me. And like, but the Mars stuff and all the shape changing and the mind and the telepathy and like delving in the thought topsies, as they called it, like could have been great scenes for him to do. It's not just the Mars flashbacks. Like there's other aspects he could have fulfilled that would have been so fascinating and interesting to see, like an iguana man in a dream world with a woman or with a small girl as his god in the sky, like would have been fantastic if it was juxtaposed against something more grounded in reality. And I think that was like a huge misstep for this book. Like, not taken away from his art. It's not really my style, as I was kind of saying, like not really something that I really like because it's a little too crazy and animated style, but it works so well with the shape changing in the Mars and stuff. And I think it would have just been so fantastic to mix that with somebody that was more grounded and more realistic art. Writing wise, we've said it 10 times. Concepts are all there, not carried out very well. Could have been explored way more in detail with the breadth of 12 issues that you had. But at the end of the day, yeah, I'm a pass. Yeah, or rather, it's a not recommend. Sorry. It's interesting if you know nothing about Martian Manhunter and this is your kind of art, go for it. But like as a comic book as a whole, no. Like I wouldn't say read this. It's a little too much, little too much going on. I don't know what I'll asleep.
Like nobody recommended it. We're done.
Yeah. It's that's the show. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's have a better outro than that.
Well, we gotta hear. I mean, someone's got to do our good journey or good journeys. Yeah. Whatever
That's been Mobius Couch, I guess. Let's get
That's been the Mobius Couch. We talked about Martian Manhunter, written by Steve Orlando, with art by Riley Rossmo,
and probably
DC
should have been someone
Black
else.
Label.
DC Black Label.
Say goodbye,
none
Al.
of the three. None of the Mobius Couch, Metron's three disciples.
It's a thumbs down for all three. That's rare.
Manhunter.
Although becoming more common.
It's verso pollice from all three.
Verso pollice.
Members.
Goodbye, everybody.
Good
Find
journey.
journeys.
Good journey, my friends.
Good
See you
journey.
next time. Thank you for tuning in and supporting the channel.
Please support our